Hello, my name is Keltus, and I speak to you from Poland. I will tell you about the father of modern Polish free market thought, the most radical and eccentric person in European Parliament. His name is Janusz Korwin-Mikke. He was born in 1942 and he is currently running for President of Poland. He came into prominence as early as late 60s, protesting against communist regime, expulsion of Jews, etc., and he was imprisoned for that, as well as relegated from his university, but he finally managed to graduate in philosophy, although his interests were also included math and psychology. His academic area of expertise was social cybernetics and decision-making theories. For a while, he worked as a scientist, but in the late 70s, he founded the underground publishing house called the Conservatives and Liberals printing house, Oficyna Konserwatystów i Liberałów, as it would be in Polish, and he started to translate, print, and distribute free market, classically liberal and libertarian classics among the free thought hungry Polish citizens tired of communist misery. Already knowing that communism is bankrupt and there's little time, Korwin-Mikke wanted to teach Poles the essence of capitalism and the fundamentals of classical liberalism. Otherwise, given the inevitable fall of communism, Poles would be left at the mercy of manipulators and socialists turned social democrats. And that's what precisely happened later. But even before 1989, Korwin-Mikke was trying to influence politics. Since 1962 to 1982, he was formally a member of a party in communist Poland known as Stronnictwo Demokratyczne, Democratic Party of all names. It was a legal party. It had its members in communist parliament because, communist Poland, in fact, had other parties sharing power with the communist United Polish Workers' Party. Well, Korwin left this Democratic Party after the infamous anti-parasite bill got passed in the parliament in 1982. This bill basically instituted forced labor and made private black market entrepreneurship illegal. It was the middle of the martial law period in Poland, dictatorship of the military junta, while the country was crumbling as its economy. Korwin-Mikke was not a member of then the opposition Solidarity movement. He considered them, and justly so, a bunch of commies and socialists, actually, who wanted to exchange authoritarian communism with democratic socialism. Korwin-Mikke preferred rather the Chinese way of reforms. Keep the authorities in power, but lose all economic controls and repression of trade, introduce capitalist reforms instead of political revolution. And this was the main aspect of his radicalism, his conflict with the middle-of-the-road liberals like the current European President Donald Tusk. At the end of the 80s, when the switch of power from communists to Solidarity was sealed, Korwin-Mikke formed his political platform, the only free market party in Poland, one of the first parties in post-communist Poland as well. The Union of Real Politics, Unia Polityki Realnej. That party reflected the worldview of Janusz Korwin-Mikke. He considered and still considers himself the only true right-winger. Therefore, the Union of Real Politics combined a radically libertarian free market economic platform with conservative social views, a pragmatic 19th century style approach to foreign affairs, strong republican spirit, despite Korwin being a monarchist, and a strong respect for the rule of law philosophy. Sounds eclectic? Not necessarily if we analyze Korwin-Mikke's views more closely. The key aspect here is his field of expertise, social cybernetics. Korwin is basically a social Darwinist. He rationally believes in the evolutionary process of selection and discarding of weaker individuals as well as societies and polities. From this perspective, he believes that monarchy is the best political system, as it had ruled for 99% of human history and had always returned, always after the degenerate periods of democratic mob rule. So, as a social cybernetician, he is not necessarily interested. Why is that so? Because he says he's only interested in what comes out of the box, so to speak, not what happens in it. This is in contrast to, for example, famous paleo-libertarian philosopher Hans Hermann Hoppe, who wrote Democracy, the Gods That Failed, to explain why democracy leads to degeneracy and socialism. Korwin-Mikke simply states that a system where two winos, two bums from the street have more voting power than a university professor, it necessarily leads to barbarism, and that's why monarchy, because from a Darwinist perspective, weak monarchs are weeded out by stronger and more enterprising monarchs, who necessarily must pursue more free market policies to win. So, as a social Darwinist, Korwin-Mikke, despite his conservatism, fully embraces total decriminalization of all drugs and total retreat of the government from regulating substance production, distribution, and usage. He says that one should be allowed to take heroin, and evolution will take care of such a person. It will get rid of her with a benefit for the rest of humanity. Despite his conservatism, he is a bon vivante and has recently fathered 2 additional children with a young party activist, despite his advanced age and marital status. His bon mots about sex are very interesting, as all of them are. For instance, he considers cheating on one's wife to be quite normal, and sexual polygamy a biological and evolutionary imperative. Despite chastising the left for abusing sex, sexual imagery, and so on, he often abuses sexual innuendos himself. For instance, quoting a supposed Russian proverb, "You can't score every girl on the planet, but you should always try," as a parable for the innovative spirit under capitalism, or whatnot. So, is Korwin-Mikke a libertarian? Nope. Not in the American nor European sense, no. Not philosophically. He does not begin at the premise of liberty. But that's not a big problem at all. Ayn Rand did not begin at this premise either, and rightly so. But Korwin-Mikke does not even begin at the premise of reason. No. He actually quite scolds pure reason. He may be very Hayekian at this issue, which would put him at odds with Ayn Rand. Korwin-Mikke considers himself a deist, and theologically he is often at odds with Catholic clergy, while he calls them out and proclaims to be the real Catholic in the house, unlike them. His uncompromising approach and individualist relation to the issue of God puts him closely to Protestant sects and as well to founding fathers of America. His most often repeated principle for political system is the Roman maxim volenti not fit injuria, that is, the willing may claim no injury. Whatever you do, you take responsibility for it, but nobody may stop you legally from doing something which might only hurt yourself. Yes, that is his basis for a free society. No big philosophy, just pure Roman legal formula for taking risks and suffering the consequences. But where Korwin-Mikke is most interesting at are his views on the dynamics of civilization. He considers the European civilization already dead and taken over by the Union civilization, that is the anti-civilization of European Union, which is an antithesis of the genuine Western European civilization. The European Union, this Soviet Union of Europe, has inverted all the virtues of the West and turned them into vices, while elevating the elements scorned, not even 100 years ago, to the new virtues of the new European man. For instance, as Korwin explains, the boys are now taught by the educational authorities that aggression is bad, is a no-no. You have to be peaceful, mild, passive about your fate. You cannot fight, nor have strong emotions of hate. Aggression and fighting spirit is being eradicated by the school system and ideology, so they may create spineless slaves who would never even consider rebellion, would never rise arms against their oppressors and their new taxes and regulations. Here, Korwin sees the ominous influence of the leftist social ideal, the spineless, passive hippie, in the school systems of Europe of today. The effects are easy to behold and foresee. European kids in school are defenseless against the aggressive, dynamic Muslim kids who were not taught passivity nor peacefulness. Korwin explains that the Islamic civilization is currently better than the Union civilization in Europe because at least Muslims are taught to be warrior-like and aggressive, so they are equipped with the will to conquer and submit others to their command, while the Europeans are not. The Europeans are only taught to follow orders of the authorities blindly and passively and behave like pigs in a sty in other circumstances. Yes. Live and pig out. This is another aspect of the Union civilization Korwin-Mikke despises. Despite capitalism creating all this wealth to consume, the Union civilization hates capitalism and its virtues of business, entrepreneurship, innovation and striving. It only craves goods so it may consume and consume in a degenerative spiral down the drain. A huge pig out in a sty, while the others provide the means to do that somehow. The essence of socialism, and the spiritual essence of the Union civilization. The Muslims, Korwin-Mikke says, they hate this mockery of civilization mostly because of this degenerated, wanton consumption and the mentality of entitlement. The Muslims, Korwin says, will cut our throats and we will passively allow them to, because we in this Union civilization are no better than cattle for slaughter. We forgot how to fight for our lives. We won't have anyone to fight this fight for us. The Muslims will take over because they despise us for what we are, weak, passive pigs with swollen bellies and no spine. Instead, Korwin says, the true European civilization was the civilization of the conquering white man, the colonizer, the fighter, the builder, the executioner, the pioneer, the tycoon, the captain of industry, the astronaut. We need to get back to the stars, to reach for the skies and the space beyond. True capitalism will allow for that because there are always bold, risking individuals who will put everything on the stake to achieve the unachievable, to do the impossible. That is where the real innovations come from. Risk, boldness, daring. This is the Western civilization, and this is what capitalism is based on. The left destroyed it. They took our boldness away and took our future with it also. The left must be crushed, says Korwin-Mikke. When he says that, you know he means that. No compromise. No fucking compromise with the leftist subhuman scum. This is the reason why Korwin-Mikke is so appealing to young sympathizers of liberty in Poland. He gives them hope. No dry data about the advantages of a freer economy or of lower taxes or fewer regulations. These are obvious for anyone with half a brain. But he shows them how that translates into life and reality. He shows them the meaning of the pursuit of happiness. His vision inspires to take arms, to act and to fight for capitalism, for civilization, with the feeling of pride and purpose in their guts. Despite lack of philosophical depth, Korwin-Mikke's gospel hits notes so close to the heroic prose of Ayn Rand that it has a similar effect, a profound exaltation, an epic loftiness in one's spirits. Alas, without philosophy of reason and egoism, this leads to pretty disastrous consequences for the logical cohesion of Korwin-Mikke's message. His current supporters, young Korwinists, believers in the conservative liberal ideology of their master, are brain-dead sycophants incapable of thinking outside the box of Korwin's slogans. As they never read his earlier, more elaborated books and articles, they rely on his recent, scant but regular ramblings and musings on his blog, which are but a curious blend of personal observations, bon mots, strange deductions, and random quotes from different famous persons, as well as shocking statements to garner more attention from the press. Is Korwin-Mikke acting as an ideologue, a politician, a father figure to young Kutz, publicist, satirist, a loony? Nobody really knows. His recent political success was to finally invade European Parliament with 3 other members of his party as Europarlamentaries in the new term of this institution. It was 21 years since he served as a publicly elected member of any body in politics, all thanks to the support garnered through the relentless and steady propaganda spread through the internet in distributing the Korwinist ideology of classical liberalism, Darwinism, social cybernetics, and critique of Eurosocialism. Just like under communism, Korwin printed freedom classics underground and spread them among the liberty-starved communist serfs, now, under Eurosocialism, Korwin inspires millions with his ideologizing by the much better suited medium for such an activity, that is the internet. So, men of the West, All hail, Korwin-Mikke!